I was fortunate enough to grow up after the era where certain parents were terrified that power chords were the gateway to eternal damnation. Back then, playing a Metallica record in the house basically equated to lighting a pentagram in the living room. With that, this band named Stryper showed up. Bible in one hand, Flying V in the other, saying it's free real estate. Imagine checking off the Jesus box while simultaneously pumping out Anthrax-style riffs. And leading that charge, Oz Fox and Michael Sweet, a very underrated shredding duo who played dual harmonies like Maiden and some breakdowns like Slayer, just with slightly more forgiveness. So yeah, this is actually a real thing. Heavier and more face-melting than a ton of non-Christian stuff. I feel this one in particular has a tornado of soulsy approach. The bends, the arpeggios, the timing. And by the way, this is relatively newer Stryper. Oz and Michael were in their 50s when ripping that. That's right. The same core is still churning out albums like it's nothing. I'm now going to show you two clips. Technically, there's no difference between the two, except one guides you into the light while the other suplexes you into it. Stryper was formed in the 80s by Michael and his brother Robert Sweet on drums, like some sort of alternate universe Christian Van Halen. Originally called Rock's Regime, which kind of sounds like a CrossFit gym, they rebranded and began spreading the gospel with arpeggio shred runs. And want to hear something insanely stupid? The original To Hell with the Devil album cover art was banned because it was too controversial. Let's see what we're working with here. It looks like 4 He-Mans pummeling Satan in jeans, with a bunch of chains, a Kamehameha energy blast, and a Randy Rhoads signature V. So the label pulled it and reissued the album with a plain black cover. It was so Christian that it went full circle and got itself banned. Anyway, these two always deliver live. They seem pretty relaxed there. My bet is they actually rein in the full abilities a bit to ensure live performances are tight. And while this is happening, Michael is just singing over it. It's almost like some kind of sick challenge. It's like, I bet you can't do a full neck sweep pick while reciting page 16 of the Old Testament. And here's a couple more things to take note of, just in case you still want to judge the book by the cover. Looking at gear, Michael Sweet is notoriously picky about tone. If he says it's not punchy enough, he'll allegedly scrap the mix and go back to rework the whole tune from scratch. Meanwhile, Oz Fox seems to just be vibing, ready to lay down a face-melting solo over anything coming his way. The original 80s Stryper sound was glam through and through, but also very carefully dialed in. Their core tone came from Mesa Boogie Mark IIc Plus heads running into Mesa 4x12 cabs. Very thrash Metallica of them, along with a Furman parametric EQ cranked around the 1000 Hz frequency. That gave their guitars a thick, full-bodied presence. far from the typical all-sizzle, high-end bite. They're known for delivering an incredible live sound that's almost a carbon copy of their studio sound. Fast forwarding to today, they've shifted to orange Thunderverb 200 heads driving Jet City 4x12 cabs. To stay true to their classic tone, they use a SansAmp paradriver, which helps preserve that signature EQ curve from back in the day. When it comes to guitars, their massive arsenal has included things like Charvel, Jackson, and Washburn over the years. Michael's calling cards are his signature Sully V and Washburn PXV models, both proudly sporting the iconic yellow and black stripes. Oz, on the other hand, often rocks his GMW signature guitars, also decked out in stripes. They seem to have a ton of variations. I really can't even keep count. And I do have a soft spot for these colorways because Van Halen's Bumblebee is probably my favorite guitar design of all time. We touched on how Stryper is aged like a fine wine, but let's rewind to their heyday in 1986. Let's take a closer look at the solo in Free. Pretty tasteful use of the dive here, using it as a tool to give some breathing room, and then bending back up into another box. Plus the tapping with added vibrato from the picking hand is always a nice way to class it up. Next. This section works in some open string picking, which honestly is a pretty sweet and underutilized technique. It gives a little air between the notes, a great contrast to the compressed flurries you typically hear in this era solos. And finally, one of those huge 24th fret bends is a nice touch, and then finishing off with one of those licks that hits redundant notes on different strings. Certainly no repetitive pentatonic tomfoolery found here. Yeah, if I were them, I'd be working on establishing a monopoly over live church performances, just constantly calling for the pit to open up in front of the altar. So whether you're a believer, or someone that just loves a tight harmony over 120 BPM, Oz Fox and Michael Sweet are a power duo totally deserving of your attention. They are a heck of a team. And proof that conviction and shred aren't mutually exclusive.